I stood under those bright stage lights looking out at 100 faces staring back at me. 6 years of research, countless sleepless nights, and finally this was it. My doctoral defense. The moment that would define everything I had worked for. But as I scanned the auditorium, all I could feel was the crushing weight of absence. My brother Kyle had promised he would be sitting in the front row clapping the loudest. He always kept his promises, until 8 months ago when a rainy highway took him from us. Or so I thought. Because right now, in row 5 on the left, I was staring at a face I had buried. A face that should not exist anymore. Kyle, my dead brother, looking right back at me. Before I tell you how my world shattered and then rebuilt itself in that single moment, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe, because what happened next will make you question everything you thought you knew about family loyalty and the lies we tell ourselves to survive. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare really began. Kyle and I grew up in a small house in Portland, Oregon. He was 4 years older than me, but the gap between us never felt like a divide. It felt like protection. When I was 7 and Kyle was 11, our father died in a construction accident. A beam fell wrong, and just like that, we became a family of 3. Mom worked double shifts as a nurse at the county hospital and picked up weekend hours at a coffee shop downtown just to keep the lights on. Kyle stepped into the role our father left behind without anyone asking him to. He taught me how to ride a bike on the cracked sidewalk outside our house, running behind me with his hand on the seat until I found my balance. He taught me how to throw a curveball in the park when other kids had their dads coaching them. And when I was 9 years old and 3 sixth graders cornered me after school demanding my lunch money, Kyle showed up like thunder. He was 13 then, skinny but fierce. He chased those boys down the block and got my $5 back. Then he looked them dead in the eye and said if they ever touched his little brother again, they would regret it. They never bothered me after that. Kyle gave up a lot for us. He got accepted to Portland State University with a partial scholarship, but after 1 year he dropped out. He said college was not for him, but I knew the truth. The tuition was eating into money Mom needed for bills. So Kyle went to work for a construction company, the same industry that killed our father. He wore a hard hat and steel-toed boots and came home every night with dust in his hair and aching muscles. He never complained. Instead, he would ask about my homework, quiz me on biology terms, push me to apply for scholarships. When I got accepted into the PhD program at the University of Washington with a full ride, Kyle reacted like he had won the lottery himself. He drove up to Seattle with Mom, helped me move into my tiny graduate student apartment, and stocked my fridge with groceries. He looked around that cramped space with pride in his eyes and said, "You are doing this for both of us, little bro. You are living the dream I never got to chase." 6 years of doctoral work is not a straight line. It is a marathon through self-doubt, failed experiments, and the constant fear that you are not smart enough. During my 3rd year, I almost quit. The pressure crushed me. My research was stalling, my advisor was losing patience, and I felt like a fraud. I called Kyle at 2 in the morning, breaking down. 3 hours later, he showed up at my apartment. He had driven through the night from Portland. We sat in my lab until sunrise, and he reminded me why I started. He told me that quitting was not an option because we had come too far. That conversation saved my career. 10 months before my defense date, I got the official confirmation. April the 12th. I called Kyle immediately. He shouted so loud through the phone that I had to pull it away from my ear. He said, "I will be in the front row, brother. Would not miss it for the world. This is your day, but it is our victory." Kyle started a countdown. Every month he sent me a message. 9 months to go, Doc. 6 months cannot wait. 3 months I am already picking out my tie. He said he was going to wear his best suit, buy the biggest bouquet of flowers, and book a reservation at the nicest restaurant in Seattle for the celebration dinner. I felt so lucky to have him, so certain that when I walked across that stage he would be there cheering. But then, 2 months before my defense, something changed. Kyle stopped answering my calls as often. When he did pick up, his responses were short distracted. I would ask if everything was okay and he would brush it off. Just busy with work, do not worry. He had been promoted to construction supervisor, so I figured the extra responsibility was weighing on him. I was too consumed with finishing my dissertation to press harder. The last time we spoke on the phone was 2 weeks before the accident. His voice sounded tired, strained. Before we hung up, he said something that stuck with me. "Love you, bro. Remember that, okay? No matter what happens." It struck me as odd, but I assumed he was just being sentimental. Maybe stress from work. I wish I had asked more questions. March 5th, 8 o'clock at night. I was at my desk revising the final chapter of my dissertation. My phone vibrated. "Mom." I answered, expecting her usual check-in. Instead, I heard her voice shaking, breaking apart with sobs. "Derek, it is Kyle. There has been an accident." The words did not register at first. I asked her to repeat herself. She could barely get the sentences out. Kyle had been driving to work early that morning on Highway 26. The rain was heavy. His truck slid on a slick patch, lost control, and went over the guardrail. It plunged 200 feet down into a ravine. The vehicle exploded on impact and burned. By the time emergency crews reached the wreckage, there was almost nothing left. The police identified him through dental records and personal items found near the site. They told Mom that his body could not be recovered intact because of the fire. They had remains. Ashes. That was it. I sat there at my desk phone pressed to my ear and felt my entire world tilt sideways. This could not be real. Kyle was invincible. He was supposed to be at my defense in 5 weeks. He promised. I got in my car and drove through the night. 3 hours from Seattle to Portland, tears blurring the road in front of me. I kept replaying his last words. "Love you, bro. Remember that, okay? No matter what happens." Did he know something was coming? Was he saying goodbye? The funeral was 4 days later on March 9th. We held it at a small chapel near our old neighborhood. Over 100 people showed up. Friends from high school co-workers from the construction company, neighbors who remembered Kyle helping them fix their porches or mow their lawns. Everyone had a story about how kind he was, how he never hesitated to lend a hand. The casket was closed. There was no body to view, just an urn with his ashes sitting on a table surrounded by flowers. I stood at the podium and read a eulogy I had written at 3 in the morning, my hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. I talked about Kyle, the protector, Kyle, the dreamer, Kyle, the brother who gave up everything so I could have a chance. I said he would never get to see me receive my doctoral degree, but that I would finish for him. I would dedicate every achievement to his memory. My voice broke halfway through. I looked at that urn and whispered, "You were supposed to be there, Kyle. You promised." Mom sat in the front row, her face buried in her hands, her whole body shaking with grief. She had already lost her husband. Now she had lost her firstborn son. I felt a crushing guilt. Why did I get to keep living, keep pursuing my dreams while Kyle was gone? The next 8 months were a fog. I finished my dissertation on autopilot. I passed my preliminary defense, but every milestone felt hollow. There were no more countdown texts, no more late-night phone calls. I put a framed photo of Kyle on my desk, the one where he was wearing his construction gear, smiling wide under the sun. I talk to it sometimes. "I am doing this for us, Kyle, just like you said." At night, I dreamed about him. In those dreams, he was alive, laughing, telling me he was proud. Then I would wake up, and the reality would crash down again. He was gone. I bought a new suit for my defense, navy blue. Kyle always liked that color. I made a reservation at the restaurant he had wanted to take me to, even though I knew he would not be there. I even asked the university to reserve a seat in the front row just for his memory. April 12th arrived. I woke up at 5 in the morning after barely sleeping. I put on the navy suit and the tie clip Kyle had given me when I started my PhD. I looked at his photo. "This is it, brother. I wish you were here." The defense was scheduled for 10 o'clock in the morning at the university auditorium. I arrived early to set up my presentation slides. Mom came, her eyes still red and swollen even after all these months. A handful of friends and professors filled the seats. I stood backstage taking deep breaths, trying to calm the storm in my chest. When the clock hit 10, I walked out onto the stage. The lights were bright, making it hard to see individual faces in the audience. I launched into my presentation 45 minutes of research on cancer cell therapy. I had practiced this talk 100 times. The words flowed automatically, but inside I felt numb. This was supposed to be the proudest moment of my life, and all I could think about was the empty seat I had reserved. The brother who should have been here. 30 minutes into my talk, I was explaining a complex data analysis when something made me glance out into the audience. It was just a habit scanning faces to gauge reactions. My eyes swept across the rows, and then without warning, my heart stopped. Row 5. Left side. A man in a gray hoodie and a baseball cap. His face was partially shadowed, but I could see enough. The shape of his jaw. The way his eyes caught the light. It was Kyle. It was my brother's face. The brother I had buried 8 months ago. I froze mid-sentence. The words on the slide behind me blurred into nothing. I stared. He stared back. For 2 seconds our eyes locked, and I saw recognition flicker across his face. Then he stood up abruptly, squeezed past the people in his row, and bolted toward the back exit. I heard myself say out loud, "Kyle!" The entire auditorium turned to look at me. My thesis advisor, sitting in the front row, frowned. "Dr. Derek, are you all right?" I blinked, shook my head, tried to pull myself together. "I'm sorry. I thought I saw someone." My hands were trembling. My voice sounded far away. I forced myself to continue the presentation, but my mind was screaming. Was I losing it? Had the stress finally broken me? Or was that really him? I stumbled through the last 15 minutes, barely aware of what I was saying. When I finished, the professors asked their questions, and somehow I answered them. They told me I passed. I should have felt relief, joy, something. Instead, I felt like I was drowning. The moment they dismissed me, I ran. I sprinted out of the auditorium and into the main hallway, searching for the man in the gray hoodie. He was gone. I found a security guard near the entrance and grabbed his arm. "Did you see a man in a gray hoodie leave about 20 minutes ago?" The guard nodded. "Yeah, he rushed out. Looked like he was in a hurry." I asked if there were cameras. He took me to the security office and pulled up the footage. There, on the grainy screen, was a figure moving quickly through the exit. The build, the gait, the way he held his shoulders. I knew that walk. I had grown up watching it. That was Kyle. But it could not be. Kyle was dead. I had been to his funeral. I had watched them lower his urn into the ground. I called Mom, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, did Kyle have a twin? Anyone in the family who looks exactly like him?" She sounded confused. "No, honey." Why? What is going on? I could not tell her the truth. Not yet. Not until I knew for sure. I told her I would call her back and hung up. That afternoon, instead of celebrating my doctorate, I got in my car and drove back to Portland. I went to the crash site on Highway 26. The guardrail was still broken. There were burn marks on the rocks below. I stood there staring down into that ravine, and a sick feeling twisted in my gut. What if Kyle never died? What if this whole thing was a lie? I could not let it go. The next morning, I went to the Portland Police Department. I asked to see the accident report. They pulled the file. Single vehicle accident. Rainy conditions. No witnesses. Body identified through dental records provided by Dr. Morrison, Kyle's dentist. I drove to Dr. Morrison's office and requested a meeting. He was an older man, kind, with silver hair and glasses. I asked him, point blank, "Are you absolutely certain those dental records matched Kyle?" He looked confused. "Well, the police sent me a chart, and I confirmed it matched our files for Kyle Henderson." I leaned forward. "Did you personally examine the remains?" He hesitated. No, I just compared the charts they gave me. My stomach dropped. Someone could have faked those charts. It would not be easy, but it was possible. I left the dentist's office and went to the construction company where Kyle worked. I asked to speak with his manager, a man named Gerald. We sat in his small office surrounded by blueprints and safety posters. I asked if Kyle had any problems before the accident. Gerald shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Well, Kyle had some financial issues. He borrowed money from the wrong people. He was stressed about it, but I never thought it would lead to anything like this. I felt my chest tighten. What kind of people? Gerald lowered his voice. Loan sharks. Word was he owed around $60,000. Gambling debts. I felt like I'd been punched. Kyle gambled I never knew. He never said a word. Gerald continued. He tried to hide it, but a couple of guys came by the site once looking for him. Rough types. Kyle was scared. I could see it. I thanked Gerald and left my mind racing. If Kyle owed that much money and loan sharks were after him, what would he do? How desperate would he get? I found Travis Kyle's best friend from high school. We met at a diner on the edge of town. Travis looked tired, older than his years. I asked him if Kyle ever talked about running away. Travis stared into his coffee cup for a long time before answering. He mentioned it once, said if he could just disappear the debt would die with him. I told him that was insane, that he would destroy everyone who loved him. But Kyle was drowning, man. He did not see another way out. I felt a chill run through me. You think he faked his death? Travis looked up at me with haunted eyes. I do not know for sure, but if anyone could pull it off, it is Kyle. He knew people who owed him favors. Everything clicked into place. The accident with no witnesses. The body burned beyond recognition. The dental records that were never physically verified. Kyle had planned this. He had staged his own death to escape his debts. And for 8 months he let us believe he was gone. He let Mom cry herself to sleep every night. He let me stand at his funeral and mourn him. The anger hit me like a tidal wave, but so did the confusion. If he went through all that trouble to disappear, why risk everything by showing up at my defense? Then I understood. Kyle could not stay away. No matter how much danger it put him in, no matter how carefully he had planned his escape, he could not miss the most important day of my life. He loved me too much. And that realization broke something inside me. I made a decision. I posted on social media tagging all of Kyle's old friends. To anyone who has seen Kyle Henderson recently, please contact me. It is urgent. It is about closure. 3 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, and I heard his voice. Quiet, shaking. Derek, I am so sorry. My hands clenched around the phone. Where are you? We need to talk, face to face. There was a long pause. Then he gave me an address. A diner on the outskirts of Portland, the kind of place nobody goes to unless they are trying to hide. I drove there the next evening. Kyle was already sitting in a back booth wearing the same gray hoodie from my defense. He looked different, thinner. His beard was overgrown and there were dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, he stood up, but I motioned for him to sit back down. I slid into the booth across from him, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Then he said, his voice cracking, I never wanted you to find out. I'm so sorry. I kept my voice low, but every word was sharp. You faked your death. You let Mom cry every night for 8 months. You let me think I lost my brother. You let me stand at your funeral and say goodbye to you. Why would you do that to us? Kyle's eyes filled with tears. I owed $60,000 to people who do not forgive debts. They threatened to kill me. I was out of options. I could not see another way. I shook my head. So, you decided to destroy your family instead. Kyle explained everything. He had found someone, a guy he knew from construction, who owed him a favor. That man helped him stage the accident. They used another body, someone who had died without family, without anyone to claim them. Kyle bribed an assistant at the coroner's office to falsify the dental records. He made it look like he died in that crash collected on a life insurance policy and used the money to pay off part of his debts and start a new life in California under a fake name. "But I could not stay away from your defense," Kyle said, his voice breaking. "I know it was selfish. I know I risked everything. But you are my little brother, and I had to see you succeed. Just one last time. I thought I could slip in and out without anyone noticing." I stared at him, this man who used to be my hero, and all I felt was a deep, aching sadness. "You did not just fake your death, Kyle. You killed the brother I loved." I had a choice to make. Part of me wanted to protect him, to let him disappear again and keep his secret. He was still my brother, the person who had sacrificed so much for me when we were kids. But the other part of me, the part that had listened to Mom sob into the phone every night, knew I could not let this go. Kyle had committed crimes, insurance fraud, filing false reports, bribing officials, and worse, he had shattered the people who loved him. There had to be consequences. I looked him in the eye. "You cannot just walk away from this. You put Mom through hell. You made me think I lost you. I will not let you do that and just vanish again." Kyle nodded slowly, tears streaming down his face. I know I am a coward. I will turn myself in. Just let me explain to Mom first." I shook my head. "No. We are going to the police. Together. You are going to face what you have done." We drove to the police station in separate cars. I was afraid if I let him out of my sight, he would run again. Inside, Kyle confessed everything to the detectives. He told them about the staged accident, the bribed coroner assistant, the fake dental records, the insurance fraud. They arrested him on the spot. They called Mom to come down. When she walked into that station and saw Kyle sitting there in handcuffs alive, she collapsed. I caught her before she hit the floor. She looked at him with so many emotions on her face that I could not name them all. Relief, rage, heartbreak. She walked over to him, slapped him hard across the face, and then pulled him into a crushing hug. "How could you do this to us?" she sobbed into his shoulder. The legal process was brutal. Kyle was charged with multiple felonies. The coroner's assistant was also arrested. The loan sharks he had been running from were investigated. Kyle pleaded guilty to everything. His lawyer argued for leniency because of the circumstances, the desperation, the threats on his life. But the judge was not sympathetic. Kyle was sentenced to 3 years in prison, along with community service and restitution to the insurance company he had defrauded. I attended the sentencing. I watched my brother stand in an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him as the judge read the verdict. He was not the hero of my childhood anymore. He was just a man who had made terrible choices out of fear. Before they took him away, he turned to me. "I am proud of you, Dr. Henderson. I am sorry I could not be the brother you deserved." The months after Kyle went to prison were some of the hardest of my life. I went back to Seattle and started my post-doctoral work, but I felt like I was moving through water. Everything was heavy. I was angry at Kyle for what he had done, but I also missed him. Not the man who had lied to us, but the brother who had taught me to ride a bike and stood up for me against bullies. I did not know how to reconcile those two versions of him. Slowly, I learned to let go. I stopped trying to make sense of why he did what he did. People are complicated. They can be good and bad at the same time. Kyle was not a villain, but he was not a hero either. He was just a person who got in over his head and made the wrong choice. I could not forgive him completely, not yet, but I could choose not to carry the weight of his mistakes for the rest of my life. I wrote him letters while he was in prison, not often and not long. Just enough to let him know I did not hate him, but that I needed time. He wrote back, always apologizing, always saying he understood. I focused on my research, on building new friendships, on learning how to stand on my own without needing validation from anyone else. I was not the little boy who needed saving anymore. I had saved myself. 2 years later, Kyle was released. He called me the day he got out. We agreed to meet for coffee. It was awkward at first, sitting across from each other after everything that had happened. He looked older, worn down by prison, but also somehow lighter, like he had finally put down a burden he had been carrying for years. We talked about small things at first. The weather, his plans to find work. Then, slowly, we talked about us. "I do not expect you to forgive me," Kyle said. "I just want you to know that I am trying to do better. I am going to therapy. I am working with a sponsor to deal with the gambling. I want to be someone you can be proud of again." I looked at him, this broken version of my brother, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. "I am not ready to go back to how things were," I said. "But I am willing to try moving forward, one step at a time." That day on stage, when I saw Kyle's face in the audience, my world shattered. I thought I had lost him, then I found him, then I lost him all over again in a different way. But in the rebuilding, I found something stronger than blind loyalty. I found the strength to demand truth even when it hurts. And I learned that sometimes the greatest love is not holding on. It is knowing when to let go and when to let someone face the consequences of their choices. Kyle will always be my brother, but I am no longer the little boy who needed saving. I saved myself. So let me ask you, have you ever had to choose between loyalty and truth? Have you ever loved someone who hurt you so deeply that you did not know if you could forgive them? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved, you hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about the messy, complicated beauty of being human. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that even when people fail us, we still have the power to choose how we heal. Take care of yourselves and remember that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing.